Hello, everybody. Poland is leaving the so-called Istanbul Convention, or the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. And you probably have not heard about it. It was established in 2011, and as the name already suggests, in Istanbul. And now all the titles of the newspapers, as you can see on Google News, is everybody's concerned about Poland leaving that valuable convention, so the title of their articles is never Poland is leaving. It's just everybody is troubled and concerned, and you have to feel this on that. You have to find it bad that the Polish want to leave that convention. And now I want to run you through the details of that treaty, because there are still a lot of member states, including Germany, and all the members of the, or almost all the members of the Council of Europe, not everybody, but a lot. And it gives some insight into the establishment, the institutionalization of feminism. As I've already announced, I'm going to make a larger video series about it, but I have to sort the information first a bit. It is bigger than I thought. It's just incredibly messy, and I did not know how advanced these people are. But the treaty on combating the violence against women and so forth gives good insight into their practices, because as the title already suggests, we are starting with a consensus that everybody can agree with. Yes, you don't want to beat women, or at least, if you're a civilized person, you don't want to beat women. But then, of course, they use this to run through their own ideas, their own policies. You read that title and that introduction and so forth, and you wonder, wait, wasn't battery already forbidden in 2011? What jurisdiction does actually have to amend so that women can call the police when they are beaten? Of course, domestic violence is still an existing problem, and nobody denies that it is. But you figure out very quickly that these people have very weird suggestions, and you would personally come up with different ideas, that you would have a smaller intervention rather to fight this issue. And their suggestions, of course, only mean that they want some taxpayer money thrown into their direction, which is a very dangerous thing, but I will come to this in a moment. So first, I want to go through the preamble of the treaty. As you can see, and you can stop the video here if you care, they start with a lot of self-indulgence, self-referential indulgence with regard of a back reference to something we have already done and said, and blah blah blah. And then they return to their main distraction point, the violence against women and domestic violence. And this is what the Justice Minister of Poland and his deputy have pointed out. And then they come with a busload of crap, the ideology, the underpinning. And I read it out to you. Recognizing that the realization of de jure and de facto equality between women and men is a key element in the prevention of violence against women. I can't tell for the life of me what they mean with equality between men and women. And this is crucial, because I'm preparing that series, as I said, about feminism, and you can't actually find a consensus among feminists. There are these equity and equality people who claim that either men and women are already equal, and you just have to recognize it, and those who say they are not yet and have to do something about it. Then you have people who don't acknowledge that there are biological differences, and you have people who would acknowledge that, and so forth, but they cannot really specify what they actually want. And even though they are not agreeable among themselves, they pretend that they want a something from you. Whatever it is, there is a something that is the equality between men and women, and you have to obey already. I mean, this is really important. You are in the way. I can't really say in the way to what, but you have to change. We're recognizing that violence against women is a manifestation of historically unequal power relations between women and men, which have led to domination over and discrimination against women by men and to the prevention of the full advancement of women. So here we have the idea that it's not cognitive differences and also biological differences that result in different life choices, lifestyles, and also some, in a direct fight. Of course, a man has a physical advantage over a woman. That all is just pushed aside for the explanation that there is some historical underpinning of all of this, some cultural fault. And the emphasis is that we have to rework the culture to amend for the differences that normal people would recognize as coming from a biological basis. This continues with the next sentence, which says, recognizing the structural nature of violence against women as gender-based violence, and that violence against women is one of the crucial social mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate position compared with men. If you think about what feminists complain about, like the pay gap and so forth, you would not think that an iron fist is the actual reason why they work in a supermarket rather than in a boardroom. But they make it out to be that it's brute force here, and they use this intro to actually go after capitalism, so to say. And the word structural always comes up as a logical distraction. Whenever they have a gap in their logic, the political left, it's not just feminists, it's also this anti-racist cultists. They say structural whenever they don't like questions. So this is always, when you hear that word structural, you have to ask questions here next time you hear a feminist speak in public, or an anti-racist or anything, because you want to know what does the word mean, and also the words around it, like the equality. What exactly do they want? What does this person in front of you actually want to achieve? You will also notice when I run through the treaty that there are a lot of vague points, and they come with very little specifics. I can agree and disagree with a lot of things that feminists may suggest, but they really try to be as vague as possible, because these women are totally in fights with one another to begin with. And they have no plan or even a concept for the words they use in public. Then they continue with the hyperhysteria that marks their activism. So it's violence, and you will see it ramps up to war, the prevention of war. So in order to amend that gender gap and whatever discomfort a feminist may have, you have to also, of course, abolish all wars, and you have to eradicate poverty, and so on and so on. So recognizing with grave concern in a treaty, that women and girls are often exposed to serious forms of violence, such as domestic violence, sexual harassment, rape, forced marriage, crimes committed in the name of so-called honor, and genital mutilation, which constitute a serious violation of the human rights of women and girls, and a major obstacle to the achievements of equality between women and men. Recognizing the ongoing human rights violations during armed conflicts that affect the civil population, especially women, in the form of widespread or systematic rape and sexual violence, and the potential for increased gender-based violence both during and after conflicts. Systematic is like structural. That's usually a keyword. When you hear it from the left, you have to ask what they actually mean. It's a giveaway of a lack of logic here. And of course, war comes with a lot of violence and tragedy and so forth, and you cannot single out the protection of one group versus another. You actually have to resolve the conflicts to begin with. But this is something all these pacifist activists would not admit, and they, of course, would also not admit that they want American troops or Western troops to stand up to the enemies. They would not admit this, but actually stopping those conflicts is the way to go to stop the rapes and the murders and everything that comes with armed conflict, right? Recognizing that women and girls are exposed to a higher risk of gender-based violence than men. Recognizing that domestic violence affects women disproportionately, and that men may also be victim of domestic violence. Yes, of course, but what they don't take into account apparently is that men and women are different when it comes to A, muscular mass, and B, aggression. Men are more aggressive, and also they have more strength, and this will never change. The issue is, and I think this is again what we can all agree with, is that you have to reduce the cases of domestic violence or any violence, right? You have to enforce the law strictly, and I can go a long way with them to monitor judges better, to create better transparency for our courtrooms. I would, instead of their suggestions, I would demand that all our public court documents are set online. I want to find them on the internet, and I want the public to debate whether a verdict is just or not, because judges are officials of the state and they have to be checked like any other representative of the government. And so this is how you can, for example, assure that violent offender gets the justice he deserves, or better, his victim deserves, right? This is how you reduce violence as such. But the proportion, right? The proportion that men are more violent than women because they are A, more aggressive, and B, stronger, physically stronger than women. And no feminism can change that. Recognizing that children are victims of domestic violence, including as witness of violence in the family. This has purely propagandistic purposes, this sentence. It is to use children. They create the most sympathy for a cause. And of course, then what they actually want is that reporters go more often to children and say, well, daddy has beaten mom, and so forth. And then the next sentence is funny. Aspiring to create a Europe free of violence against women and domestic violence. After war and, honor killing and so forth, you are reminded again that we are talking about Europe, okay? We are not talking about Africa or Asia. No, all this is about Europe first and foremost. And also they want to totally eradicate the problem. And there is no problem in the world that you can solve for once and for all and completely and so forth. And you always have to kind of take into account whether your medicine is still better than the underlying disease. If your crackdown is worse than the thing you try to resolve, you should not crack down. And I think this treaty is an example of how they like to lose the focus with their hysteria. And on purpose, right? They want to overthrow actually something, and they just use a topic that everybody can agree with to upend a larger system.